What's up? This is Dr. Taylor Krick at Washington Wellness Center, and today's video is about the Autoimmune Paleo Protocol. Kind of an overview and a quick how-to. The purpose of this is really for a lot of my patients who, maybe we're going to put them on an Autoimmune Paleo Protocol diet, and I'm going to say, hey, go home and watch this video, and then go out and do the things that I talk about in the video, like, get some cookbooks or look some things up. So we're going to give you an overview of this plan. Now, the plan is just like it says, it's designed for autoimmunity, and it is a paleo-based diet. But yeah, we're going to talk about what that means. So this is a very, very popular diet. So first off, let me just explain that the way that we teach this in our practice is through something called the that we've created, but it's called the 10 steps of autoimmune eating. And the autoimmune protocol, as you'll see here, is the top. And the purpose of this graphic is to show that, sometimes you need to be up here at step 10. That's what we're going to talk about right now. But then throughout trial and error, throughout, elimination and reintroduction, you might wind up and end up, maybe down around step 7 for the rest of your life, or you maybe end up around step 6 or 5, or, what are triggers for you? So that's a visual graphic of the fact that, you don't always have to follow this AIP diet. The AIP diet is where you begin, and we're going to talk about reintroduction of foods and some of the most common triggers and things like that. So what is the autoimmune protocol, otherwise known as the autoimmune paleo protocol? So AIP is an elimination diet that eliminates the most common and most problematic food triggers. Okay, these are food triggers that trigger food sensitivities and hence pour fuel on an autoimmune fire. So they trigger IgG immune reactivity, meaning that if we did a food sensitivity test, we'd be able to measure this immune reactivity on these tests. And so hence they fuel autoimmune inflammation. So the foods that are listed, the foods that we're going to talk about today, they are the most common and the most problematic triggers that are going to pour fuel on the fire and increase inflammation that's seen with autoimmune disease. So the AIP diet is largely based around the idea that a leaky gut or intestinal permeability leads to food sensitivities and is a contributing factor in most autoimmune conditions. So, and I would say it's at least a contributing factor to the overall inflammatory burden of a patient. It's not always the instigating factor, not always the causative factor, but it's always a contributing factor. So whether you have, MS or rheumatoid arthritis or Hashimoto's or Graves or Crohn's or, name any autoimmune condition, there are over 100, this is a good place to start for many people. So AIP has been popularized by many bloggers, many authors, and so forth. And we're going to give credit to those people, at the end of who are the resources, who are the pioneers in this. But many people also trying to manage their autoimmune condition and having good success with it. So, there's thousands of success stories and different things online, and lots of people that have done an AIP protocol or some version of it. But I said here, it's not necessarily for everyone, even if you have autoimmune. So I will occasionally get people who come in and they've maybe done AIP for like a year or for a long period of time, and they're still really struggling and really suffering. So this isn't the end-all be-all. And for some people, I'll say, hey, you need to correct your gut first with FODMAPs and with some bloaters and some SIBO type stuff first, and then we move more towards AIP or different things with food triggers. Or some people, there's a lot of customization that goes along with this, and that's why, of course, I always encourage people to work with a practitioner, but somebody who's knowledgeable on the autoimmune paleo protocol. So it's something that we've used, lots. So yeah. So this is an elimination diet, and you may have heard of an elimination diet, but an elimination / provocation diet is still considered scientifically the gold standard for food sensitivity. So there are food sensitivity tests. We do them often. I trust Cyrex Labs the most. But looking for IgG food sensitivity, and there are really crappy ones too. But really, for food sensitivities, an elimination and provocation diet is still the gold standard. And the concept of this is pretty simple. Eliminate a food or a food group for a period of time, and then provoke the body by reintroducing the foods one at a time so that you can see if you get any symptomatic response. So that's step 3, you observe for any inflammatory response. Do you get a new symptom? Do you get a returning symptom? And it could be digestive symptoms, certainly like bloating, indigestion. But in the autoimmune world, we're looking more for inflammatory symptoms. So if you have GI inflammation, absolutely bloating, indigestion, diarrhea, but more even fatigue, brain inflammation, brain fog, mental fatigue, mental sluggishness, joint inflammation, aches and pains, poor sleep, even depression or anxiety, but symptoms. They're looking for provocation or the return of symptoms, and just being super aware of how your body is reacting to each individual foods. So with that being said, what all do you need to eliminate? Well, quite frankly, AIP is overwhelming. So when you look at it, and like, let's say you've never heard of it, and that's also why we have the 10 steps, is if you just got diagnosed with autoimmunity, and I say you need to follow an autoimmune protocol, it's going to be pretty overwhelming. So maybe you start by going up to step 5, going up to step 6, then, a month later you go up to step 7, you do a whole 30 or something, and then you move into AIP. Or we also have the people who are diagnosed, and it's like, hey, jump right into AIP. Here's the book. Just here's what you can eat. And everybody's just in a different place with their life. So what do you need to eliminate? Well, in priority order, some of them: grains, dairy, eggs, and let me talk about them all. So grains. So all grains. So not just gluten, not gluten-free toast, not gluten-free brownies, not gluten-free cookies. All grains. Now you can make them with some of the flours that we're going to talk about, but most of the gluten-free products that are out there are still grain containing. Popcorn is still corn. Gluten-free, Rice Krispie treats are still rice. And so those are grains. So rice, quinoa, corn, eliminating all grains, which is typical of just a paleo diet or even a Whole30 diet. Dairy also, so all dairy products. For a period of time, all dairy. Dairy is highly reactive. Dairy can cross-react with gluten, and just those two are huge. And no matter what, no matter where you're at, we recommend everybody start off there. We recommend that's where everybody stay, is kind of paleo-ish of grain-free, dairy-free, or at least gluten-free, dairy-free. Kind of for everybody. I mean, for kids, for families, really, really tough thing. Sometimes we'll tell people, 90-10. The correct answer is avoid those things completely. But, the reality is, I have, 3 kids under 6. So it's really, really hard to avoid these things completely. But those are the first 2. Eggs, all eggs. Especially the white. Some people think, oh, the whites, that's the protein part. That's the point. Your body reacts to the protein, so the yolks are actually something that you reintroduce before the whites. But grains, dairy, eggs, nuts and seeds, legumes, so that's beans. We're going to talk about it a little bit more. Nightshades, lectins, alcohol, and caffeine. So some of you just tuned out and stopped the webinar right now. But yeah, it is fairly restrictive. Now the grains and dairy and eggs, I think a lot of people know about that. Soy, you could add soy on there too. That one kind of goes without saying. But legumes, nightshades, lectins, those are some of the things that take a standard paleo diet to the next level with an autoimmune paleo diet. So I want to talk about those, specifically. So legumes are all beans, peas, anything in a pod, peanut, cashew, lentils, I believe even pistachios, but yeah, all legumes are going to be off limits on this. Nightshades include things like tomatoes, potatoes, all peppers, so bell peppers, hot peppers, chili peppers, paprika, even because it's pepper derived. Eggplant is also a nightshade. And for some people, what they may find is that one food is a trigger for them. They may find that one food group is a trigger from them. And the reason with these food groups is that they all have, similar properties. So that's why they're all considered members of the nightshade family. And lectins, and this isn't a complete lectin-free diet. A lectin-free diet is slightly different. And I put this book in here to just remind me to talk about it. But, the plant paradox, that's exactly what that's talking about, is the problem with lectins, what lectins are. So lectins are defense mechanisms that are in plants, because plants don't want to be eaten. So they have defense mechanisms to keep things from eating them. It just so happens that we are smarter and we can pick whatever we want and eat whatever we want. But these defense mechanisms are still hurting us on the inside. So there are many nuts, seeds, legumes, and vegetables that fall into the lectin category. And once again, we don't teach the plant paradox exactly, but lectins can be a serious problem. Lectins can activate the complement pathway, and lectins can allow passage of food proteins across the gut lining in the absence of a true leaky gut. So sometimes you might not truly have leaky gut, and you can still have lectin-induced inflammation. So it's just an interesting thing that a lot of the AIP principles do take into consideration with the lectins. So you eliminate these foods and then you reintroduce them. So foods are recommended to be reintroduced in stages. This is according to Dr. Sarah Ballantyne, and some people teach it differently. And if you're working with somebody, sometimes it's a lot different if things are customized. But stage one is your egg yolks. These are some of the least reactive foods. So your egg yolks, then some of your legumes with edible pods, so like your snap peas and your green beans and things like that. Then ghee, grass-fed ghee, very not very reactive. And then even some of your nut and seed oils, some of your nut and seed oils into stage one. Stage two, then you're putting more seeds, more nuts, with the exception of cashews and pistachios, which cashews are a very high lectin-containing nut. So your nuts, you're reintroducing chocolate, you're adding egg whites, grass-fed butter, which is also pretty unreactive, and alcohol, a little bit of alcohol. Stage three, then you're going cashews and pistachios, eggplants, then you're going more for the nightshade. So stage 2 and 3, you can kind of see that there's spaced out different members of the nightshade and lectin families. So eggplant, sweet peppers, paprika, then you're adding back in coffee, grass-fed raw cream. If you do dairy, I don't encourage it. If it's grass-fed and it's raw, then it could be great. It could be a superfood. A lot of people don't have access to that, so either figure it out or just ignore the dairy component of this if you're going to stay dairy-free. And fermented grass-fed raw dairy once again, so things like kefir and some of those fermented dairy beverages and things. And then stage 4, you're getting to some of your other nightshades: chili peppers, tomatoes, potatoes, your white rice, and then like some of your legumes, if they're properly prepared, they're soaked or they're fermented. Some of your grains like quinoa and amaranth and things like that, if they're soaked and fermented, if you're ever even getting back to that. But I just encourage being grain-free as much as possible. Yeah, but some of those resistant starches can be really, really good for the gut too. So there is some benefit to some of those, but you want to be very careful. So what can you eat? And that's one of the things that we encourage is, yes, the lists of what you can't eat are overwhelming. Yes, you're going to be like a little bit depressed when you read them. Forget about it and focus on what you can eat. So we're going to show you some cookbooks. We're going to show you, some of the things that we use for our patients and give them resources and where can you find out about this. But with any meal plan, don't focus on what you can't eat. Only focus on what you can eat. So what do you eat? You eat grass-fed organic meats, wild-caught salmon, any other seafood as well, organic free-range chicken, organic grass-fed beef, lamb, bison, organ meats, other seafood, shellfish. So those are fairly unreactive in the sense of autoimmune inflammation. Many vegetables, you can still eat a lot of vegetables. And people say, gosh, I'm eating all meat and veggies. Like, well, yes, meat, veggies, and fats. That's exactly what you're eating. So your leafy greens. So that's your spinach, your kale, your collard greens, your arugula, your romaine, etc. Squashes, zucchini, pumpkin squash, spaghetti squash is amazing. So there goes your pasta replacement, your spaghetti squash, your zucchini noodles. Root vegetables like sweet potato, jicama, onion, parsnip, radish. So even like, an awesome thing is like to replace chips. Maybe it's jicama and hummus, except you can't do garbanzo beans. So maybe it's radish and guacamole as a replacement for chips. And so some of those crunchy things can be really, really good. Or there are some grain-free hummuses that are out there, I do believe. So some of the root veggies, and then some of your cruciferous veggies, your broccoli, your cauliflower. So once again, there's your replacement for rice, cauliflower rice, broccoli rice. Your replacement for mashed potatoes, your cauliflower mashed potatoes. So already some really, really good things. And then you want to get a high variety of fibers. That's a just general rule for everybody. You don't want to just get stuck on one or two things and just be eating broccoli and chicken every night, or you're going to develop broccoli and chicken sensitivities for sure. You want to keep a high variety of these foods. You want to keep them on a rotation. You don't want your body to get too used to it. Most fruits are allowed, like almost all fruits, and depending on blood sugar control. I don't expect you to or encourage you to just be eating like strawberry smoothies and banana smoothies all day. You're going to jack up your blood sugar. But then there's things like avocados, berries, coconut, and then there are the strawberries, the melons, the things like that. So lots and lots of fruits, and then most good fats are allowed. Olives and olive oil, avocados and avocado oil, coconuts and coconut oil. And other animal fats like lard and tallow can be really good. So, and then here's some others. So for baking, what can you do? Well, there are things that are allowed like arrowroot flour, tapioca flour, coconut flour. So baking, it's certainly possible to do AIP baking. The sweeteners you can use, things like maple syrup, you can use coconut crystals, you can use local raw honey to sweeten things up. And then you can use a lot of spices, so bay leaves, turmeric, cinnamon, ground ginger, ground cloves, thyme, rosemary, so a lot of herbs, sage, oregano, basil, tarragon, sea salt. So make sure, it's for some of you, this is really going to get you out of your comfort zone because you should be using these things all the time. These spices and seasonings are loaded with different polyphenols and antioxidants, and turmeric and cinnamon alone are just packed with antioxidants and nutrition. So you should be using a lot of these all the time. And what happens for a lot of people is that day one, they're like, how am I ever going to do this? And by day 30 or day 60 or wherever it is, they're like, why would I ever go back to eating the way that normal people eat? So there is a learning curve, but once you learn what you're going to learn and you experience what you're going to experience, you're probably never going to want to go back. And then here's a picture of some of the cookbooks, and we're going to get to those too, but that's the thing is, buy a cookbook. Here's a crock pot recipe. That sounds so good to me right now. Here's an Autoimmune Paleo cookbook and action plan. Here's the one that I just held up. That's our favorite one. It's really, really good. We're going to talk about that. Here are some suggestions for success. The first thing is, don't go in and like Eeyore, like, I gotta eat this autoimmune paleo diet. Woe is me. Like you're setting yourself up for failure, and you're just like counting down the days until you can try a new food and stuff. And like I said, some people do this for years. I have people come in to me and they've done it for. I have one mother and daughter. They've done it for over 2 years, coming up on 3 years now. And I said, well, gosh, how do you guys do that? And they said, we started off just like everybody else, It was intimidating. It was hard, and now it's just a way of life. And the mom's lost over 100 pounds, and different things. So wrap your head around the idea that this is a lifestyle, not a 30-day or even a 3-month diet. Now you're going to be reintroducing some things, so there is some light at the end of the tunnel. But just wrap your head around the way that this is how you have to eat. I had somebody text me the other day. They said, "Are my son's food sensitivity results back yet? He's getting really tired of eating like this." And this kid's got basically IBS. So I'm like, man, you better get used to it, because you're either going to eat like this and heal your IBS, or you're not, and it's going to get worse. Don't focus on what you cannot eat. Focus on what you can eat. I already said that one. Buy a couple cookbooks and just pick from the available recipes. Pick what sounds good and just try that. There's going to be some trial and error. Like if you start AIP baking, you're probably going to throw some dishes in the garbage like the first try. But the second try is going to be really, really good. And by the third or fourth, if you make cookies or something like that, it's going to be really, really good by the third or fourth try. It can be delicious. It can be absolutely delicious. But have a plan, pick some recipes, do some grocery shopping, do some food prep, chop your veggies, cook your meat in advance, make enough for leftovers. Have a plan and be prepared for sure. Then some other suggestions for success, join a Facebook group. There's thousands of people out there that have done this, and learn from them. Find a blog to follow, or use Pinterest. Pinterest is amazing for this. Or type into Google, AIP breakfast, AIP smoothies, AIP kids snacks, AIP desserts. Whatever you're struggling with finding help with, we get, and I talk about this a lot, we get this thing called learned helplessness, where it's like, like me, I'll go home tonight, and if my wife's not there, I'm like, oh my gosh, what could I eat? There's nothing here. There's enough food there for me to live like, 6 months probably. There's tons of food there, but you get this learned helplessness of like, oh my gosh, what can I eat? And you get that, everybody gets that, and you get that with AIP, like, well, gosh, what can I do for breakfast? I'm getting so bored. Well, type it into Google, and you're going to get 1,000 different suggestions, and then try one. So there are hundreds of blogs, videos, etc. that are now out there to help you succeed with this. Make Pinterest your best friend. Read some stuff, look some stuff up, make a plan, pick a recipe, try something, and go from there. Here are some resources. So Dr. Sarah Ballantyne is a great resource. She's commonly credited as the founder of the Autoimmune Paleo protocol. She really certainly popularized it and put a name on it and called it the AIP protocol. Her website is thepaleomom.com. She's amazing. She's a PhD, like it says. And just a ton of good resources through her with regards to eating for autoimmunity. Mickey Trescott is another one. That's the author of the book that I just held up. We've got a couple Mickey Trescott books here I'll show you. But really, really great resource there. Dr. Karazian, so that's my mentor, Dr. Tatis Karazian. And he really, was the first person I would say to really start talking about this with his first book, years ago, before Autoimmune Paleo was really a name, back when people, thought Hashimoto's was like a Japanese restaurant down the street or something. But drknews.com, the other Dr. K, I like to call him. But yeah, my mentor that I've done hundreds of hours of continuing ed education with Dr. Karazian. And then Dr. Gundry, he wrote that book that we already showed, The Plant Paradox. He's very, very well known, very, very well seen, very good marketer, I would say, because everybody's seen him. And I don't necessarily bang the same drum as him, but really, really great information. Plant Paradox Cookbook, etc. And then here are a few. We have all three of these in our office. We lend them out to people. We encourage you to get your own copy, but we do have a lending library. I just brought this one down here, which is the Autoimmune Paleo Cookbook. If there's one to start with, it's this one. And I just had somebody return it. And by the way, we don't even know if she has autoimmunity. And that's the case a lot of times. We may suspect it. Maybe people don't want to do the testing to figure it out. But this person, she said the other day, her bloating and her motility, which is what she came in for. She's having a bowel movement every couple days, and she was just severely bloated. She said they're resolved and they're a non-issue. So she just took this book home and was trying some recipes and maybe photocopying, taking some pictures of them. The paleo approach, more broad for a paleo approach to just autoimmune in general. Same with the autoimmune wellness handbook. I put this screenshot up here so you can see that they're inexpensive, they're easy. Sometimes I'll have patients just they're sitting in our console and they're like, okay, I just bought it right now. And it's shipping to their house right then. So a lot of different resources. All three of these are really, really good. But an autoimmune paleo protocol is something that we encourage. This book, by the way, gives like all the lists, all the lists of what to eat, all the lists of what not to eat, reintroduction. It has a section on gut healing foods and the power of bone broth and the power of fermented foods and the power of organ meats, and there's different things about kind of an ancestral and paleo lifestyle in general. So if you're new to this game, if you just got diagnosed with autoimmunity, your head's probably spinning. If you've been in this game for a while and you're familiar and you've read a couple books or listened to a couple podcasts or read a couple blogs, maybe this is just the next step in your journey or your health evolution. But no matter where you're at, just know once again that this is a long game and you're getting into it and you're looking for these food triggers, but over time your gut, your inflammation, your autoimmunity can heal, and you will have autoimmunity for life, but it can go into remission. Your inflammatory burden can go down drastically, and we see really great results. And the diet alone is not what does it. We have a saying that in today's world, diet will not get you well. And so I would say that if you have autoimmunity and you're not my patient, just know this is not going to be the end all be all. And if you think that it is, you have false expectations and you're going to be let down. The diet is not the end all be all. In today's world, diet alone will not fix your health condition, certainly not your autoimmune condition, but you can't do it without it. So it is really, really important. It is a foundational piece, but we got to look at those other components like toxicity and gut health and stress and sleep and blood sugar control and detoxification and all those things that we always talk about here on this YouTube channel. So hope that helps. And check out our other videos if you want to know more about the 10 steps of autoimmune eating, or we have an ebook download that explains the 10 steps of autoimmune eating. I really like that concept because we might just tell somebody, hey, move to step 5 for now, because step 10 sounds really, really overwhelming. Or if they might not need step 10, they might get amazing results with just going paleo and eliminating grains and dairy. They might not need to go the nightshade and lectin route. But if somebody's very inflamed, we just want to start with the most aggressive thing and then work our way backwards from there once we start getting progress. So hope that was helpful. Check out our other videos and subscribe to our channel and etc. Let us know how you felt about this one down in the comments.